Thank you very much for sticking around. We have another round of XR. It's more future-orientated and more mixed approach. We are not only talking about sport, we're talking about the transition of traditional broadcast into XR broadcast. And what does that mean? My bridge to this is John again. I reused John.
Yeah, I apologize to everyone for having to see me a second time if you were here 20 minutes ago.
Are you interested in future at BBC?
I hope so, yeah.
I hope so too.
Yeah, do you want, yeah, so obviously, just don't know if you're doing roles or whatever, so I'm design director for BBC Sport, and obviously we've just done the project on the Summer Euros with the LED and the extended reality, and obviously we've worked a lot with virtual, and obviously we're just looking to what we're going to be doing in the future on that journey.
That's good. And your best friend Fadi is here. So welcome, Fadi. You're coming the whole way down from Dubai to here. You are representative Blinks. I learned about Blinks. Could you talk us through that and your role and what it is?
Perfect. So I'm coming from the future. If you are discussing
You're coming from the future
because it is Blinks is a digital native hub, storytelling. For young generation, they produce their own content for their own generation. And the setup that we gave them is a top-notch facilities where we use remote production, where we use like cloud production, automation, and also XR. So we are the first media outlet in the region to use XR, equipped with like Visor T and like Unreal. And this XR stage where you can really do storytelling in a totally different perspective.
Great. So we're coming back to that, to Blinks. Now let me introduce Alessandro. Could you introduce yourself? You have many hats on. You are Sky, of course. That's nice. But you're also president of SVJ. So you're more a kind of politician.
Oh, don't call me a politician. And at the end of the now, I'm Alessandro. I'm heading
A bit close.
operations, sports, and news for continental Europe. And of course, I'm also, let's say, chairing the SVG advisory board for SVG Europe. And yeah, kind of a holistic perspective where the trends is going, and let's say try to implement it at Sky Sports News. So yeah, obviously the future is now.
I heard your speech yesterday in the sport community, very futuristic. We come back to that.
We will.
So, another person we don't know. It's a monk. Media monks, they call themselves monks now because they learned that their audience can't spell the long name. And Luis is coming from the States because he's in charge of broadcast. Tell us a bit about yourself and the monks.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Louis Smithingham, EVP of Strategic Industries at Monks. I come from a crew background. I knew this show as a camera operator. Came here for my first time as a camera operator, geek out at cameras back in the day, and eventually got annoyed enough at producers that I worked my way up to being a producer, and I owned a content company with Doug Lyman, focusing on interactive content and new ways to monetize old IP. And then I got too annoyed with the studios and decided I wanted to be an executive, and so ended up being an executive at a technology company where we look at how we can work with media entertainment companies like everybody here, and actually how they can engage with new audiences, new ways of monetizing content, new ways of engaging with IP, and frankly, change what has sort of been a broken system. We tend to break a lot of traditions, not just to break them, but for the purpose of looking at new ways of engaging with audiences and the world.
So we go the other way around. What would be a new way for broadcast?
Well, I think the problem with broadcast, we were just talking about it a second ago, and this is, I'm not throwing shade on anybody here. I watch sports, I love sports, but I was saying to a news client we have the other day that I actually don't watch news on TV. I watch influencers watching the news on Twitch for the purpose of being able to interact with them and personalize to our audience. And I think in this day and age, particularly for younger audiences, if it's not personalized, if it's not interactive, it feels broken. Netflix, in their most recent earnings report, when asked who their biggest competitor was, they didn't say Warner Brothers, they said Fortnite. And that's because that level of interactivity, if you can imagine you're spending 5-6 hours a day playing video games, I mean, all of a sudden you turn on a broadcast where the dolly is based on a B-17 bomb loader, and things are moving and being cut in the same exact way it was cut in 1936, it would feel weird to you in the same way. Like, look, I'm a huge fan of silent film, but if I watch films from back then, it just feels so slow. So we look at is how we can insert new technology into storytelling within productions, how we can use things like XR to bring forward new ways of broadcasting. We broadcast the NBA in VR probably for 4 or 5 seasons now. And I think a lot of things that we can work on with broadcasters is looking at how we can change the nature of the broadcast without changing it and distracting from traditional fans as well. Because, you know, all this sort of stuff does not have to happen, particularly because we're so frequently in digital formats. They do not have to happen to things that in places where people don't want it.
So what had that to do with XR, and what has that to do with LEDs? I think, Fadi, you went to China and bought an LED.
Yes.
And because you want your young people to have the best.
Of course, because those young people are so enthusiastic and they want to do something new. And they ask for like non-traditional things. They want to do things in a different way for their generation to attract. And for that, we had to give them the best technology, which really teleporting them into their story. So they tell the story while living the story. And on another hand, we're working on interactive. Like the model of one-to-many is really dying, in my opinion, because what we are working on at the moment is something where you have one-to-one model, where even the present, like all the audience can control things. Why they don't send something and it will appear on the XR behind whoever is presenting? Like, they want to see themselves. They want to be part of this. They want to take the action and not to tell them what to do. And for that, the best technology is to use something that can connect all the devices together, because it's no longer like a TV, it's a screen. So the screen can be on any shape and any format. So that's why we do our transmission even, or like streaming on vertical and horizontal for so many shows.
Fadi, to your point, in XR, we've done some really interesting experiments and done a few broadcasts. When you start getting to like HFR XR walls, where you're actually sending a different background on every frame and then you're breaking out. We've done it at 60, but it's doable at 90 and 120. You could then have potentially 4 different backdrops, 4 different types of engagements, 4 different fan groups. So I'm a big hockey fan, love the Hurricanes, hate the Rangers. God forbid you show a Rangers logo in my broadcast. I could have a broadcast where I never have to see that if it's set on an XR wall.
Nice that he talked about Ghost Frame. You know, BBC suffered a bit to understand the whole potential of the XR studio. How you young people adapt to this technology in an instant, or how?
You're talking about also being young, is that right, Olaf? Yeah.
Okay.
But seriously, so it's you for everybody, and you started with the most complex technology.
Because like I worked in TV for over 20 years, and I know when we do a chroma key, where the presenter needs to be extremely good to imagine what's happening and act based on that. Now with the XR, they can interact immediately. They can see what's going on. And also, don't forget, even the lighting, everything, all the reflections are coming is a plus. It's not anymore you spend hours and hours of cleaning the chroma keying of green or red or like blue or any of that. And they can wear anything. So they can interact, they can wear anything, they can be themselves and see the results immediately.
Alessandro, is that this audience, Fadi's audience, producing their own content for their own audience, is that something sport is looking into? Is that important?
I think we have to look into 100%, and we have to be brave to do that, because at the end of the day, and sports is a very traditional environment. We have to keep it honest, and Luis said it. I mean, the clips, the highlight clips are not differentiating 10 years ago as of today. You want to tell the story, but nevertheless, I think Fadi's point is really important. This is authenticity. people talking to people and they understand what they have to talk to. And it's not about, okay, maybe there's a graphics popping up or whatever. This is show at the end of the day. Or you mean it really meaningful for the audience you want to pick up, because this is, I mean, the future is multi-platform. This is a given fact. And you have to pick the fans and the customers where they are. And they need the right approach and the right storytelling to do so. And then I think it's rather, let's say, and I said it yesterday, I mean, at the end of the day, in every editorial department should sit the most best influencer in the world and give him the full freedom to tell a story on certain platforms. And then you develop the new storytelling for sports. And you have to be, let's say, also in the consideration, there are a lot of traditional sport viewers out there, and you don't want to, let's say, miss them. But therefore, you have multiple outlets, and the storytelling you have and the graphics popping up, or let's say the interactivity or the gamification is not for everyone. But nevertheless, what is wrong would be to say, well, it's something for a generation we don't want to speak to. Let's carve it out, and someone else should pick up. This is the wrong approach from.
But storytelling could be also in a green key. Why do you need an expensive LED?
Well, it's a good point. I mean, I think I mentioned it earlier in that the sense is, BBC, obviously very traditional broadcaster. As Alessandro says, sport, football, it's four people sitting around a desk talking about the game. That's traditionally what it's been. Now, the thing is, I mentioned earlier that in the past, set design, studio, for example. Now, generally, the viewers out there, all they want to watch is the football. They're not that interested in what the studio looks like, even though us in the industry are very interested. The thing that, obviously, using the extended reality, or we found, is that we had the biggest interaction from people outside the industry on social media, actually discussing what is real and what isn't, and also, for the first time, our talent, who, again, not interested in what environment they sit in, we were able to put on a clip up of them seeing the studio for the first time on social media, because they were like, wow, what's this? I think our executive producer just said before, one of the presenters came in and he wanted to go into the museum, which was a graphic on the screen, because he'd seen it on air before and he thought it was real. So I think, going back to the point, that's not people interacting with it as such, but it's creating a story that then can go outside of the broadcast, on social media, and all of those kind of things.
Let me pick up that, because this is exactly the point. We're doing this to tell a better story. And you're using all the technology to tell the better story. And I have to recognize, if you be at home with your kids or not, and they playing all the time FIFA or something or whatever, they want to see exactly the same kind of graphics popping up and telling why the whatever player X, Y, Z is having those data and perfectly is a left foot, a right foot, whatever, because they are used to. And this is not a generation thing, because the older generation also, let's say, appreciate, because it's the better storytelling. And the more you can use it, and that's why I really appreciate BBC, what they've done so far, also for the Euros, is because they're telling a better story. It is absolutely about everything what we're doing, about technology, why we're using it, is to tell better story.
So Fadi, your approach is you're not curating you're helping to create the content, but your people create their own content. It's not curated by editors, something like editing department. So does that work?
Actually, we do everything with our content creators. We do, the chance we have to grab the attention of our audience is 3 seconds. That's the 3 seconds, because before they swipe up, it's either they stay or and continue with you a few more seconds, or they just swipe up and that's it. So you need to impress them from the first few seconds. That's it. Then you work on the next seconds to keep them on. So you have to create complicated scenes. You have to create wow factor effects at the beginning of each video, in a way that they can really attract their audience, and at the same time tell the story the way it is. You cannot go slow pace at all, because you have less than a minute to tell the whole story and to make it as informative as possible.
The last question for everybody, then we are through. how will the future of broadcast end up? You know, yesterday we heard UB events are dead because it's too expensive. Linear storytelling is dead. That will be not happen in a second, or will that happen anyway, or will they coexist? And will we still have Green Key Studios old school tools to tell a good story, or does everybody need an LED? John, if you start and you go through it.
Yeah, good. I mean, obviously, just going back on that point about the linear and all that, I think Alessandro on our SVG yesterday it was talked about. It's not dead. You know, it's coexisting with everything else. But I think that the main thing, as we've just discussed on this, it's about kind of trying to bring the younger people in on the journey with the broadcast. And as I say, with like Fadi, with Blinks, and as we've been talking about on the rest of the panel about, you know, whether that's interactivity, but it's also the youth kind of seeing that broadcasters are doing quite cool things. You know, we're not just fuddy-duddies. We are trying to kind of do cool things. It's that is what I would say is kind of going forward, is that we've got to just keep trying to push things forward and be brave and be bold. Even if you are classed as a traditional broadcaster, it's about being brave and bold.
100%. I think the future is one-to-one more than one-to-many, multi-screen, and a lot of interactive. Imagine generative AI, what can do, even for our sets, even for our worlds. If you own the XR, run the generative AI behind, it can generate a 3D scene for you in seconds. Put the content creator there and let them do whatever they want, from magic of storytelling and interacting with people.
I can echo everything. I want to add, let's say, again, story-centric, story first. We are fortunate to run big studios, and this is a really luxury situation we are in. We can play with the latest tools, and we have to embrace and be brave enough to say, okay, let's create a bombardment of great stories on the wall, on the floor, wherever it is, and engage with the younger audience, which is used to play games. Yeah. And we keep them. We have to keep them.
Yeah, I mean, I'll add a couple layers to that. I think calling sport dead when we had the single most watched broadcast since the moon landing happened this year because a pop star was in attendance, yet she was only on screen 12 times the entire broadcast. I'm not necessarily an NFL fan, but that felt like a miss in my mind. And I look to what's going on in Brazil, where Casemiro, who's one of the biggest Twitch streamers in the world, actually bought the rights to FIFA. So if you want to watch FIFA in Brazil, you watch it on Twitch. I live in North Carolina now, where Mr. Beast is based, and he has a studio about half the size of yours, I would say. I was out in Brentwood the other week, and I was like, oh yeah, so I think the difference here that we want to look at is not that anything's dying and not that anything's changing, but to your point, Fadi, personalization is going to matter. Scale is going to matter. Being able to do 16 different broadcasts with only one piece of equipment is going to matter. That's where things like LEDs, XR are really going to come in hard. And you look at, my uncle came over. I'm actually, despite this accent, I'm actually Mancunian. My uncle came over. I'm not going to do the accent. We watched some hockey games. And he started telling me, oh, this is like football because of this reason. And in the same reason why wasn't there a Taylor Swift broadcast of the Super Bowl? When we start thinking about how we import soccer into the United States, why isn't there an American football fan broadcast of football? And so that's where that personalization will start to get to scale. It's not going to destroy the traditional ways. We've honed this craft over 57 years. However, what we have to start thinking about is how there's not just one TV anymore. We don't all turn on the TV at 6 p.m. and sit down. The TV pickup factor, which is a big thing in the UK, we know about that?
Yeah.
TV pickup factor, which is where the entire electrical grid in the country used to jump when everybody turned on their electrical kettles when somebody on Corey died.
That's correct, yeah.
That's not going to happen again. What's going to happen are different versions of that same story for everybody at scale.
So thank you very much. And our role as ROE will be to facilitate and to help this, to build up this future and stay in contact with you guys. Thank you very much for coming. We have a traditional present Very careful with that. It's a special panel. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you.